Ladies and gentlemen, it is with my great pleasure to introduce you tonight's guest. He's a legend, he's an author, he is a co creator, and more importantly, he's a cool guy, and his name is Matt Powers. Hours of Powers with Matt, the permaculturestudent.com. You want to meet Matt? We're about to actually meet the actual Matt. He's up in the top right corner there. But here he was back in the hippie days, just probably a year and a half ago, when he looked like a rock star. Now, Matt's not only an author of maybe like 11 or more books, but he's also an educator, an entrepreneur focused on radically transforming the K through 12 experience, which is kick ass because these kids are being indoctrinated with garbage, and permaculture is not garbage. It's absolutely healing knowledge about sustainability, about the planet we live on, about no waste, about waste has its place. I mean, we're about to talk about some breaking concepts tonight, and I think this is our fourth or fifth interview. It doesn't matter. It could be the 400th, but tonight's discussion is going to be one of the most important with Matt Powers. Guys, if you don't know Matt, check out his YouTube channel because it just broke 9,000 subscribers. I think these interviews might have something to do with that, Matt. What do you think? How the heck are you?
I totally think they do. I am doing amazing, and a lot of it is embodying permaculture, not just in the garden, but in my daily life, in the foods I eat, in the medicines I take, in the medicines I don't take, in the time I spend outdoors, working with plants, learning from plants, observing ecosystems in action, observing animals and their behavior. All of these things are permaculture, and I've had an amazing week. This coming back to California in the past few months after having spent over a decade working with the landscapes here has been so amazing to be back and back in the garden in California.
Okay, okay, Matt. Now you know what the topic is, and we have bad connection tonight, so you just froze up. But my audio is still good, so you will be back, and you may be hearing what I'm saying. So just bear with us. But what we're going to be talking about tonight is very significant to permaculture and people that are interested in learning what it actually is. Now, I just watched a video from one of my favorite guys up in Canada. You might know him. His last name is Subkoyak, and he introduced me 5 years ago to the NAP program, and that's the nitrogen apple pear uh, permaculture principle that he designed. And so what the permaculture food forest that I designed is based around the NAP process, which is basically nitrogen apple pear, which I use honey locust. Usually I put an apple, a cherry, maybe a pear or a plum, and then another carrageenan or another locust because I'm using the guilds in my region. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to have the most success. Now, he was using guilds up in Ontario in his permaculture orchard. And I just watched an update on that orchard at Ferme Farms, or however you pronounce it. And that place is brilliant. And he even has the Egyptian walking onions that I've now planted over at 1,000 locations in my front 22 acres. So that's just an introduction to what we're going to be talking about. Food forests, resilient plantings in the form of permaculture guilds. And more importantly, Matt, we're going to start tonight with the topic that we missed last week, Shinrin-Yoku, which is forest bathing. Now, it was developed in the early 1980s. Some people think this is ancient, and I know it's ancient Ayurvedic. It might even be like 10, 20, 40,000 years old, this information. And it might have been part of an ancient lost culture that kept them well and actually allowed them to age hundreds of years because it has been proven since the inception of Shinrin-Yoku, which is forest bathing, that this directly affects the immune system And not only that, your state of mind. And those are the two most affected things in all of humanity today. What say you?
I say I completely agree, and I feel like the reason it feels so ancient is because it's instinctual, and we develop as soon as we start practicing Shinrin-Yoku. When we start forest bathing, is another way that people call it. We start to feel this feedback loop. We start to, when you taste good food, you get that reaction. You're like, your body's like, whoa, this is amazing. You feel great. It tastes great too. And it's the same thing with forest bathing, where you start doing it, you start foraging. Maybe you're mushroom hunting, but you're doing all these things that are feeding into this relationship, this recognition and sensory experience that all of us start off with as humans. We all start off with this sensory experience. We're out in the world, we're tasting nature, smelling nature, touching nature, and it's this immersion of experience that is our deepest learning modality. And so when we immerse ourselves in our most natural habitat, in the forest, and we engage all the senses, it's been proven through research and diligent research. These forests are showing up in America next to hospitals now and healthcare and wellness centers to help people with addiction, help people in recovery, help people with depression and anxiety. And it is this forest bathing, this proven medically backed, research-based practice that we are now seeing. And I was able to interview a doctor in Iowa, of all places, conservative Iowa. You know what I mean? They're doing this, and they're so excited about it, and they know the research, they know what's possible, and I'm really excited to see it everywhere, because every landscape could become so beautiful and functional and resilient at the same time.
Yeah, Matt, I'm about to head back to Philly in the morning. I'm about to head back to Philly in the morning, and Philadelphia is one of the has one of the largest inner city parks in all of the world. It's called Fairmount Park. In fact, 1/8 of the entire city is a park, and this is some of the most ancient old growth forest in actual America, and some of the oldest horticultural gardens exist right outside of Philadelphia, where all of the native species from Europe were originally brought over into this region. So the forests in Philly contain some of the most obscure native fruits that were brought over here, that you can't imagine. There is so much edible food in the Philadelphia forest right inside of the city, which is why Philadelphia is one of the healthiest cities in the world. And it's because of this ability for most of the population to experience Shinrin-Yoku. Now, it's a simple process, and we'll just go through it here. All you have to do is go to a forest, which I will do in Fairmount Park in 2 days. I'll be in Philadelphia, and I'm going to walk right into the forest, and I'm going to eat the raspberries because they're in, by the way. So I'm going to be headed for the raspberries. I'm going to walk slowly and breathe. Now, I am a practitioner of heart math, and what you want to be doing is getting yourself into stasis. and this is basically done by breathing equally in and out for about 5-second intervals. And all you have to do it for 5 or 6 minutes, and it brings you in this state of being where your heart relaxes and your soul opens up. Now, this happens naturally due to Shinrin-Yoku, and I think heart math is the way you can replicate it at your desk. But if you do them in conjunction, oh my goodness, you open up all your senses and you can feel the healing way of forest bathing immediately. It's medicine of simply being in the forest. And I have this picture brought up here, Matt, because It's in a major city in America. Probably, this looks tropical. I would say it's probably Atlanta. I'm looking over here. I don't know what these trees are. That is definitely a sycamore. So it's somewhere zone 6 or greater. Uh, and she's just outside the city and she's just touching the sand. She's barefoot. She's grounding. She's breathing the pollen. She's touching the earth. She's connecting with source. Okay, now it's your turn. Blow it up.
So for me, I think that I've always come back to nature and this connection and immersion, almost in that deafening silence of nature. Like in winter, in when I was a ski racer. I started skiing when I was 2 years old, and whether I was on skis or whether it was after the ski day was over, I was always outside, always in the woods. I would always go off the trails into the woods, and I feel like there's this connection in that silence, that cathedral of trees and forest where you're surrounded by time and the elapse of cycles and patterns. You see before you just that this is where you were born, and when that tree's this big, that'll be where my children, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, you see time all around you playing out, and then you just connect to everything. You feel the cycles of nature. You feel yourself as part of it. And for me, I grew up connected to nature, and then I was in New York City. I was all disconnected from nature. 9/11 happened while I was there. My parents got divorced. I became a musician. I just spent a lot of time in buildings, and I became really disconnected. And when I moved out west and started gardening, it healed a part of me that was unhealable through all the other modalities, through music and hanging out with friends and and spiritual, everything couldn't reach that zone, but it was that quiet connection, that reverence, that the temple of nature, of Mother Nature, of God's creation, being touched me so deep. I just realized this is what I'm here for. This is who I am. And it just gave me this deep alignment. And I think that those deep alignment moments, I've come to realize, are health moments. People think they're all in your head or your heart, and they're not physical, they're not biological, but they completely are. Everything's holistic. It's not just, it's bioelectric. It's, the exchange of the spores and you connecting your gut biome and body's biome to the soil, which is our future body. And so it's getting our bodies into this holistic communication with the world around us that really gives us this deep connectivity, deep understanding, and overall a deep sense of peace, and that's really what we want in life, that undeniable rock foundation of peace.
That was beautifully stated. Beautifully stated, Matt. And that's why I have you on the show, because I know that when you speak from the heart, you produce knowledge that the audience can absorb immediately. And we're going to quickly fuse this Shinrin-Yoku forest bathing technique, which is basically just walking in the woods. It was easy to do in historical times because there was mostly woods. But the number one thing that's forming now is urban
Mm-hmm.
areas. So the woods are becoming less and less, but even urban areas have woods. And I want to tie this into permaculture. But first, I want to elaborate on some of the things you said. And let's talk about epigenetics as we move forward here. Because it is my understanding in the last 10 years of my research with GMOs and everything that's happening in monoculture and agriculture, that the food we eat, and grandma said this, you are what you eat. The food we eat is changing us. And it is, I've even read some scientific papers coming out in the last 5 years, which basically state that if you're eating mostly processed food and they contain glyphosate, your gut biome can learn to replicate that pesticide, which is actually an herbicide, I apologize, that herbicide directly in your gut. And you can actually have gut biome replicating glyphosate in your gut. Now, that's not the point I want to make, except that's very dangerous. That leads to all the things that we're seeing in modern society today, which includes gluten intolerance, microperforations in the bowel, autism, and other inflammatory sickness. But I want to get back to the solution. The solution is to eliminate these products from your dietary consumption. And you can do that through permaculture, which is why we're talking tonight. We're talking about permaculture. We're talking about Shinrin-Yoku and forest bathing. And while you're healing yourself in nature, you can begin to learn about the forest system. You can begin to learn about food forests and the nature of the layering within the forest. And this leads us to permaculture guilds. Now, the reason permaculture is the solution to our problems, Matt, is because it adds all the micronutrients back into our diets provided by the mycelium through the forest system, which keeps our immune system at top condition. It also provides the healing that we need for our chakras, the energy systems. We reconnect with nature, and that shifts our mood more into stasis, stability. And we know we can do this through breathing alone, but forest bathing not only is a connection to nature, but it teaches us about food forests and what you and I have been learning for decades, right? We've been learning about the layered system of nature. And it's these food forests that I believe are the key to the future. And we're coming over here to neverendingfood.org, and they have a brilliant explanation of what a permaculture guild is. It's a permaculture guild, not to confuse you, and you don't have to spend thousands of dollars at university to understand what Matt and I know. First, start forest bathing. Get out there. Just walk around. Take your shoes off. Get dirt in your fingernails and start looking at the plants. And then you can come for some more esoteric or advanced research here on the guilds. Now, these guilds are based on the natural systems you will be experiencing. You have a high story, and you have an understory, and then you have a lower story, and then you have a ground cover, and it's all working in harmony. It's almost like a symphony, only it's a symphony of nature. There are multiple layers of vegetation growing together in very diverse settings, and they are all complementary, which is the beauty of these systems. You see trees, shrubs, plants, insects, animals, and then there's mycelium, there's fungi. And all these components in this natural ecosystem serve a function. And that function is to make everything thrive abundantly. And I don't know if you know, Matt, but I'm pretty sure you know that humans are part of that permaculture guild because we feed from it.
Oh yeah.
And that's the beauty of these guilds. They are absolutely, we are embracing nature to be abundant in life, in health, in harmony, in knowledge, and food. Oh my God, I'm getting more calls. What say you, Matt?
Man, you're a popular. Indestructible through our digestion. They're very small, and they actually are so small. The actual surfaces of our cells, and then the cells change the proteins that they put out, and we're protein making machines, and it literally changes the output and the behavior of our cells. So food is literally changing the functions of our body. So the food that we eat that's negative is going to directly negatively affect our cells. So you're going to have cells that are making mistakes, cells that are growing cancer, cells that are making toxins, cells that are, you're feeding it the wrong information. And so when we're getting our plants communicating in a guild, in a beneficial family, a community, an economy that's regenerative and always putting carbon and nitrogen and all this biomass, which is the food for the plants, all that build up over and over again, that's the bank. That's the soil bank. And they're just getting richer and richer every year. And the food that you get out of that is just fed, has all the microbiology's goodness in it, because plants can't pull things out themselves. Actually, it's all the fungi, it's all the bacteria working in this amazing orchestration of relationship that releases it just as it does inside our guts, inside our bodies. Because we don't magically just like slurp the food out. No, there's biology in our guts. There's fungi in our guts and bacteria in our guts working together to pull the nutrition out of the food, just like the soil is pulling it out of the humic compounds, the humus, the compost, the calcium put in, all the and the biology that you put in is all pooping and eating each other and making waste, and it's all contributing to the most diverse options in that economy. So those plants are literally supported, protected, and then they get to pick and choose how to live best. And plants know instinctually where to go. It's like the flow of water. They're going to choose what's best for them if they have all the options. And the same thing is true of your gut. So you create this feedback loop of the highest levels and the most developed levels of food, of soil biology, and then the result is your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual, your emotional health. All these things are connected so deeply. People are like, I've been thinking bad thoughts. I feel bad. It's like you eat bad food. Now you feel bad. It's like it's all connected. And when we raise the boats in all these areas,
I apologize for Matt keep cutting out, but we're gonna keep on keeping on.
are am I back?
Yeah, you're back now. So let's change
All
over.
right.
You've only cut out
Well,
twice for a few minutes. You want to finish up and then we'll get over and talk about some guilds?
oh dear. Yeah. Yeah, it's really this relationship that is inside us and outside us that we need to enhance. We need to realize that the health of the forest, the health of the soil, is the health of our bodies, health of our children, the health of our future. And that's what these guilds really are about. It's about closing that gap in our understanding and our lifestyle.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. So let's for the layman out there, if you have no idea what we're talking about, just go back to the Shinrin-Yoku, forest bathing. When you go out and you haven't been in nature for a while that you feel better. And even Julius Caesar, okay, Julius Caesar was the one who found out the curative nature of wild lettuce. He demanded a salad before each meal because he felt better from eating the wild lettuce. That had to do with the lacticarium in the lettuce, which is actually wild medicine, which gave him a little high. So he got high before he ate by eating the salad. And you individuals, if you don't eat salads and you finally eat a salad the first time in your life, because everyone's like, you got to eat a salad, you eat it, and you're like, wow, I feel pretty good. It's because of the nutrients in the lettuce. Now, this is just one single plant. And Matt and I know that there are millions of plants that make up the forest garden, layers of a forest garden. Look how tiny the guy is here. He's only down here in the herbaceous layer, in the shrub layer. And then you have a lower tree layer that grows the fruit, and an upper shade layer, the tall tree layer, which is the windbreak, and the house for thousands of species of birds and insects that are raining down micronutrients that are feeding the food. It's a system of amazing simplicity that we don't use. In fact, since the turn of the century, monoculture has destroyed the planet of micronutrients, and we should have been using the food forest system all along, which I'm pretty sure ancient cultures have used. Now, there are many guilds, and just like Matt tied in the gut biome. I said butt biome. Oh my God. Okay, let's get back to the gut biome. Now, here we're looking at a wet meadow guild. It doesn't matter where you live. You can make a miniature food forest to suit your situation. Here's an ash guild. This would do great in zone 7. I know all about the ash tree. The ash tree could grow 120 feet, and then you have the autumnal olives below, the gooseberry currant or spring bulbs as the ground cover. It's a brilliant guild. I love it, but it's only useful in certain regions. So, and the way you find out what guilds are useful for you is to go out in nature. And Matt, let me tell you how I did it here. I did all my permaculture research. I watched all of the top guys, and I came up with my own conclusions. And I did my own thing, just like you're doing. I went out into my forest here, and I watched it for a year. And I saw what it did in drought, and I saw what it did in wet. And I located currants and gooseberries and serviceberry. I located lupine. I located every type of pine tree. And we also have oak. And we can even have the occasional poplar, willow, and other wetland plant here like cottonwood. So I designed my guilds here based on what I saw. I plant currant and gooseberry and apple and pear and plum. And I used the nitrogen apple pear, the NAP program that was given us by Stefan Subkowiak almost a decade ago. And he is one of my number one heroes in the permaculture movement, bar none. The reason Jeff Lawton is not my hero is because he actually gave us, our channel, our only copyright strike because I used one of his info documentaries in one of my videos, which I think is completely uncalled for on his part, because if he wants this message out, he shouldn't be giving copyright strikes to people that are supporting the message. Now, Stefan is another story. I've done all kind of programs on his orchard and his video, and he loves it because it gets him more views. I mean, it gets him thousands of people that are interested in this to go over and learn about the nitrogen apple pear. Take a nap. That's what I learned 10 years ago. If I do this right, when I'm done, I can take a nap. And I'm getting old, and I'm about to take a nap in abundance. What say you?
I love it. I love it. Stefan is a friend. He has been a mentor. He's one of my teachers in the Advanced Permaculture Student Online. I've gotten to see him speak at Permaculture Voices. I saw him in Permaculture Orchard, which is Miracle Farms, Le Ferme de Mercal, right? yeah.
Yes, Miracle
it's truly
Orchard.
amazing what he has done. Yeah, and it's that he has a high water table, and many of us are in areas where we have wet spots, and we're like, what do we do there? And Stefan has such an elegant, pragmatic, and straight forward. Yeah, he just takes things head on, and he's like, it actually, one of the most amazing parts of it is he's an ornithologist. He's
an ornithologist, and Matt will be right back.
Come back, Matt. All right, come on, Matt. Oh, I'm back. Oh, good. But yeah, he's an ornithologist, so he understands everything in his system from a natural perspective. So what he does, is like based on like the ecologist, based on the biodiversity, he's thinking about the insects, he's thinking about the pest cycles, he's thinking about everything on these different trophic levels. And so when he does these very simple and elegant things like the nap planting method, we see that it's coming from a very sophisticated, very deep understanding. And he's honed it down for us into this wonderful, elegant, powerful concept. And he does that. He does plant in trios. He has people thinking about things in really simple and powerful ways.
let me break in here, bro.
You have permaculture.
Let me break in here.
Go for it.
Now, you and I have been working probably over a decade in permaculture, and an actual permaculture where we're doing it. And he was the one that inspired me. And guess what? I've had breakthroughs from initially implementing his system, and he has too. And I just watched his most recent update, and he is confirming what I know already, and I'm about to share with you, that the NAP method's great, but it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because you have to add more. And his original NAP method was great, but you still had to spray kaolinite on stuff and maybe spot treat here. Now, the problem we have in the high desert where I am is that when I use the NAP method and I added maybe a few other extra understories, I would still get these huge outbursts of pests, let's say on a single plum tree or a single apricot. And I'm just like, what's going on here? The whole tree is affected, right? So I just wait. And what I've done here at my orchard is a little different than what he taught me, but what he now knows. And I've seen him on this update. I planted hundreds of other species within those guilds. So they're just not 4 or 5 species. They're 50 species thick. Now, what this does for us here, and oh my God, I don't want that. What this does for us here is that once that outbreak occurs on my plum tree, okay, and the whole plum tree is affected, and all the leaves wither, we have understory that starts to come up, right? We have the echinacea coming up, and then we have the lemon balm, and then we have the catnips already up. So these things start coming up, hundreds of species underneath the plum, and they draw in the native predators that fix the problem. So by right now, mid-July, all of my problems have been fixed due to biodiversity alone. Has nothing to, I don't have to spray here. I never want to spray here. I don't want to have to add kaolinite or any extra anything. I want it to work based on biology alone. I want the plants to come up to draw in the insects that then attack the predators. And that is what we've been able to have occur here. So what we did here was we integrated the NAP procedure, but I also selectively chopped and dropped everything I wanted out and kept everything I wanted in. So I incorporated over 15 of the native species of perennial medicinal herbs like wild lettuce. We also have amazing I can't even go on. We have amaranth here. We have a sunflower variety. So I add all of these native varieties. We have native geranium. We have lamb's quarter. These are the things that I perpetuate in addition to the NAP to add biodiversity in the system. So literally under a single tree, I will have 14 to 20 species of perennial, quote unquote, weeds, which we know as food products and herbs that are growing under that tree, which provides me the gateway to success.
Yeah, and I think Stefan's system of NAP, I mean, we just got to remember that's just for trees. We're not talking about understories, and we're not talking about the vines. We're not talking about the ground cover or the clumpers, or you know what I mean? These are just the trees. So to handle the pests and all that, you do need all the other pieces to the guild. But for managing nitrogen and feeding the soil with nitrogen, that's where that NAP method really comes in handy. In my systems, I did exactly the same thing that you do. And people think it's wasteful. People think I'm crazy. But then I always have things that are quote unquote impossible happen because I partner and give room and possibility in my systems. So I'm planting 60 times the variety that will be there. I'm letting the system tell me, hey, I can grow this, or I can't grow that right now. And it's that relationship, that conversation that we gain when we overplant or over diversify at first, and really observe and learn in those first few years. But again, you're still learning at 10 years, 12 years, wherever you're at, because there's so much information to be had.
Yeah, and once you change that system, right? You're doing what you and I are doing. We're selectively. So the first thing I did was I came out here and I just looked at the weeds. Our number one weed was amaranth. So I was like, holy
Mhm.
shit, I got to go with amaranth. So I just threw down some Love Lies Bleeding amaranth. I just threw it down. Maybe I threw some straw on it. I didn't care, but I wet it, right? I was very limited in what I was doing. I don't want to take, and then it was everywhere. And I was like, yeah, yeah. So nature told me amaranth, diamond, you better plant amaranth here, right? And so I tried quinoa, but quinoa didn't work. But
Yeah.
after the third year, as I slowly improved the soil, lamb's quarter showed up in fields. Now, lamb's quarter usually shows up in the worst area. So you can imagine how our soil is here. I went from worse than the worst to the worst, and lamb's quarter showed up. So I was like, well, maybe now quinoa will work. And I threw quinoa out this year, and guess what? It grew like a weed, like lamb's quarter, because the soil has just improved to the level of quinoa. So now I can do quinoa and amaranth, and I obviously can do all the other grains. I have had wild oats growing here from the beginning. We have wheat, we have barley varieties growing naturally, self-propagating, natural amaranths, natural quinoa now as of this year. And not only that, I've propagated a landrace version of mustard, red orach, and red Russian kale that is now proliferated a 5 to 7 acre region, which could literally feed dozens of people if just because I use it for chicken food. It's just growing and feeding bees now for the beauty of the pollinators. And that is the beauty of these guilds. It's amazing.
Nice.
And the longer we get into them,
Yeah.
right? So 5 years in, we have to learn a whole new set of things because we have so much more mycelium and nutrients that we can now do a whole different set. We can bring it up to a different level.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's always exponential. Every year is always better than the last. That's the incredible part.
And so it baffles me why we stick with the monoculture. If every single year can be better and we can continue to build these systems, which can become more and more abundant based on our observation and our reaction. And I love what you said I watched one of your videos about chop and drop, and it was so inspiring. I can't even believe it's like only 400 views. And it was brilliant because if you're not doing it and seeing what happens and you're listening to what someone else says, you're a sucker because the information comes from you. And that's the beauty of why we're alive. We each have a unique set of information. Your information is coming from your area. And if I ever met you, you could share something if you looked at my systems that I could implement that I could never see because I've never been there, right, Matt? And then you could come to my systems and be like, what is that? And I said, well, I did this. And you'd be like, oh my God, I want to try that. So that's why I planted your giant orange amaranth to see what it does here and so on and so forth. So I'll send you some of my quinoa and you see what it can do for you. And that's how we to collectively bring this all up. It's not hard. It's hard work, but it's not hard. It's a labor of love, man. How do you feel?
I want to watch a video on how to make it super easy to take those giant heads amaranth and quickly turn them into just seed. I've got how to seed save with a fan, a whole like video. You just set up like one of those big window fans and just do it right, and you actually position it so that the seeds fall and the duff goes right past it. So it's super easy.
Yeah, I've showed my viewers how to wind blow the chaff off of many. I have many seed saving videos for brassicas, and even my Love Lies Bleeding Amaranth. That's the number one treatment we use is wind. So you can literally harvest like a pound or two of seed, which also has 3 pounds of chaff. Put it in a big bin and just shake it around like a maniac and blow on it. And what you get is the pure, gorgeous life. I mean, it's literally an encyclopedia of genetic information which can cure the planet right in that seed.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, and that seed has been informed by the landscape it's from, and when you're seed seeding it, and it's that bioregion, just like you said, I mean, you give it a few seasons, and it's completely different. It's learned that system. It's been through that feedback loop several times. Just like we should be eating the garden food that we grow, you know what I mean, and having it go through us several times, several years into that you have a completely different conversation happening with you in that landscape biologically.
Yeah, and your health is based on your location. So you need to be eating the micronutrients in your location because all of the parasites and toxins in the region you're living are directly affected by the nutrients in your region. And what I mean by that is that if certain sicknesses in certain regions are
Mm.
curable only by the nutrients from the plants in that region. So if you continue to incorporate the micronutrients in your region from local foods, local blooms, local blossoms, local pollen, local honey, your immune system will be in top shape. And for those of you listening that are like, oh, Matt and Diamond are great, and they talk about all this shit, and they got 50 acres, and F those pricks. Well, you don't, I mean, have you been listening? These guilds are tiny. You can make a food forest and literally, here, what am I measuring in the wet guild meadow? This is 30 by 30. Okay? That's 30 feet by 30 feet. Most people in a city have that as a backyard. If you have 10 by 30, if you have 10 by 10, 10 by 10. That's the front yard of an apartment building. You can grow your own fruit tree guild. My favorite guild because it's filled with medicinal herbs, berries. You can plant a nut tree in here. You can have a honey locust. You can have an apple tree. It's such a small guild that you can plant this anywhere in a 5 by 5 plot. You can have a food forest. So it's not just for people with acreage. Anyone can do this. So I'm going to leave you links to guilds for the small scale home garden. This is from Jonathan Engels. It's brilliant. It'll teach you that you only need 9 square feet to make a food forest. 9 square feet. You can make your own raised bed that big in your garage and have a food forest there if you buy lights. Not only that, I'm going to link you to the Midwest Permaculture site, which is one of my favorites because it sits right in the middle of the zones, right around 5, 6, 7, and 8, which everyone can use almost all over the globe to make their own guilds. You don't have to plant only the plants in your region that are recommended for your zone. You can go below your zone all day and you can get some of the most intriguing and interesting guilds ever conceivable. You can even go up in your zone if you're planting on a south facing wall. You can create a heat wall. There are so many things you can do that it's so easy to do. Microclimates are everywhere. Micro conditions are everywhere. And this site gives you at Midwest Permaculture an amazing 80 favorite plants for permaculture guilds in most of the zones in the world. It tells you how big they go, how long they go, what their common name is, what their scientific name. Did you know black locust is Rubina pseudoacacia? Holy macaroni! I'm learning. What are you learning, Matt?
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I think that Daniel Halsey actually might be the one behind a lot of this data. He runs the permaculture design plant database. So the natural capital is the permaculture design plant database, and you can actually look up specific plants and then get their information. You can look up guilds and get the whole breakdown of like the nitrogen, the protein, the fat, all the nutrition. And yeah, that's probably where the information is coming from that. I'm pretty sure he is in that group, Midwest Permaculture. He might be even head of it. He's also PRI USA, and he's a good friend and a teacher of mine. But yeah, there are so many resources online, big to small. And what you do with this information is create cookie cutters. And then let's say you've got a lot of land. Well, you just put them together, you know what I mean? And then you suddenly have your whole food forest already planned because the guilds make it all knowable. You can stack them and you can put them on contour in between your lanes, at key line, or on your swales, but you can literally create these knowable spaces and map it out. You can even explain this and show it to your landscaping person, if you know what I mean, if you want to hire it out. But the reality is that it's so easy, so scalable, micro to macro, homestead to farm. It's very powerful. So I hope that everyone who's watching this takes the time to look up permaculture guilds, to even if you don't even want to read anything, just click on the Google images and look at a few of the pictures and you'll be like, oh, I get this. Okay. And just start doing it, because the reality is you can cram tons of good things in a small space. And we've been just led to believe kind of a myth about how plants should be planted, how plants behave, how nature works, by many of the gardens and the spacing that we've seen in TV and movies and growing up in the spaces around us. And things can get really packed, things can get really tight in there, and they can have a lot of benefit actually when they get in there and work together that synergistically. So take the time, do the exploring, start with Shinrin-Yoku, go out there, bathe in the forest, feel that connection, observe, see how the guilds are working out in nature, see how there's so many different things in all the different layers, and then take it on home, make it yours, make it something that serves you, make it, the things that are going to bring in your pollinators, your areas, best native local plants, and make it happen.
Yeah,
Because
make
it's
it
easy.
happen. Make it happen. Permaculture guilds are simple. They're forest systems that you can heal yourself with if you're sick and you need help with your mood and with your immune system. Just walk in the woods. Learn about what's growing there. Then
Yeah.
incorporate that on your land, no matter what scale. If you want to learn how to do it, you can watch my channel and our interviews with Matt Powers, or you can just come over to Matt Powers, the permaculture student on YouTube, and watch it all for free. You can even come over to the permaculturestudent.com and look at these amazing pictures of Matt and read about how awesome he is. And not only that, I think he gives out tons of free stuff. But we want you to just take your shoes off and hang out with, because look, there are hot chicks in the woods, man. If you're lonely, go get them. Permaculture guilds are simply ways to mimic the forest in your front yard. Layers of a forest garden equal abundance in life and abundance in your immunity. And it frees you from your reliance on the broken food system, first of all. If you have 800 pounds of apples on a tree, you have 800 pounds of free food. You do. And it's not just for people with acreage. You can ask your apartment guy, if can I plant on this little 10 square foot area here? He'll be like, sure, make it look good. You can ask a local church. There are community gardens. There are ways to organize people to get this going. If you get it going now, you're going to hedge yourself for any eventuality in the future. Midwest Permaculture, by the way, Matt, was created. This list here we're looking at that we're going to share with everyone was compiled by Eric Peterson. Is that who you said?
No, I said Daniel Halsey, but that's all good. The information that Daniel has compiled involves people from so many of these different groups. We basically are all feeding our information locally to Daniel, create biofunctional mappings for all of our guilds. And you can check it out. There's a free version of Plant Database, Natural Capital, the Permaculture Plant Database. And there's also a paying version that's like $20 a year. It's cheap. But it literally gives you all the guild information, the plant information, and it's super powerful. So very awesome. I love it.
Yeah, so we'll link everyone below to Daniel Halsey. I'll get that details from Matt. Matt, it's been a pleasure. It always is. And I hope that we inspired some people to go out and walk in the forest, understand the forest systems, and maybe bring a little bit of that abundance into their life. You do not need chemical inputs from the local hardware store. You do not need to do what we've been doing for the last 100 years, depleting the soil of nutrition. You need to be healing the soil while you heal your soul through permaculture. We love you, Matt Powers. Parting words?
Thanks for having me on. I love being here.
We love you.